Hi guys, it's Mrs. Gershon here. This week we're going to be working with some words that you might tend to think are a little bit on the easier side because some of these words are everyday words. So we're going to be looking at how to put two words together into what we call a contraction. Now this is really an important lesson because oftentimes in our own writing, during our writing block, we notice that students don't always know the correct time or place to use an apostrophe. And contractions is one of those times and places, but we also need to learn where to put our apostrophe. That's really important. So when we have a high frequency word and we combine it with the words not, as you see as our headers, is, have, and will, you can actually shorten that short phrase into one word that we call a contraction. Now, this is something that you probably have experience with, like in the word cannot, changing cannot to can't. You won't find that word on here. We're working with a little bit more difficult words than that. But just as an example, that's something that you probably recognize. So we're going to be taking each of those headers and we're going to be combining it with an everyday word or a high frequency word. But we're going to be also shortening that to a contraction when we're using an apostrophe. So let's dive right in. I'm going to read to you our words minus the headers, and then we'll start combining those headers with some everyday words. So here we go. We have could've. Oops, I'm sorry. I need my pen here. We have could've, there's, aren't, this'll, might've, he'll, don't. Then we have couldn't, they'll, would've, here's, weren't, she'll, hasn't, what's. And then we have who's, wouldn't, that'll, should've, where's, doesn't, you'll, and who'll. Now they kind of sound funny when you're saying them in isolation, when you're saying them by themselves, but we use these words every day in sentences when we're speaking to other people. So just think about that as you're kind of going through and saying these words. So looking at our word not up here at the top, let's identify some words that have not attached to them with an apostrophe as a contraction. So our first word I see in our first column is aren't. Aren't would really be are not. And you'll notice you're kind of removing the O in not when you're combining it with the word are. So the apostrophe kind of goes where, or does go, where the O normally exists in the word not. Let's see if that pattern is true for all of the other words that have not. So I'm looking down at the bottom, don't. Notice the apostrophe is where that O would be in the word not. Same with couldn't, could not. That apostrophe is there where the O would be. Weren't, were not. Same thing. As I'm looking through, I won't go through all of them, but they all follow that same rule. You're adding N to the end of the word, you're taking the O out and putting an apostrophe, and then a T at the end. Now let's look at our word is. So in our first column, we have theirs, which is just a shortened version or a contraction of there is, and you're taking out that vowel again and putting an apostrophe where the I would normally go. So instead of having an IS there, you have your apostrophe S. Let's see if this holds true for other words that have is attached to the end. Here's, here is, again that I is gone, the apostrophe is there. What's, what is, down on the bottom, second column. Again, the I is gone, the apostrophe is there. And I'm looking through the rest, I won't go through all of them, but that rule holds true for is, dropping the I and putting an apostrophe S. Then we have as one of our headers. Now this is an interesting one. I'm looking at our very first word in our first column, could've, which is could have put together. But this time, you're taking away the HA and adding apostrophe VE. Now let's see if that rule holds true for other words that have the word have attached to it. Might have, they're taking out the HA and putting the apostrophe there. Second column, would've, would have. Again, same rule. So as you're going through and noticing the words that have attached to a word as a contraction, you're taking out the HA and you're replacing it with an apostrophe. And our last word that we add on to other words to shorten for this sort, there are others, but for this sort, we have will. So in our first column, you have this'll, which sounds funny when you say it like that, but this will, like this will be a great game, this will be a great game. You're taking out the WI and you're adding apostrophe LL. Kind of like in have, you're taking out the first two letters. I'm looking through he'll, he will, in our first column here. Again, you're taking out the the WI, and you're putting that apostrophe LL, and that holds true for all of the words that have will attached to the end as a contraction. If you have any questions, please raise your hand. I can come around and help you. And just really be looking at those endings and where the apostrophe is. That's the big thing to study for this week. All right, grab your scissors and happy sorting.